Since the dawn of time, the lands of yore have been ruled by the great powers. HBO Max, Hulu, Disney Plus, the old streaming Netflix, and of course, the mightiest of them all, BritBox. Yet still, on September 2018, a newfound service was being emerged from the womb of a sketch comedy YouTube channel, though the people not really give us a crap until around the time of the plague. This is why, on this day, our narrator, nay, our hero, is verily... out of medievally sounding words to say, but basically, I came into this project as a fan of Dropout. I never really got into College Humor, the YouTube sketch comedy channel that would eventually transform into the streaming service that is Dropout. I did watch a few sketches back in the day, but since the channel didn't consist of Minecraft Let's Plays, Kid Me didn't really exactly care about them at the time. However, I do care about Dropout now, which brings us to the title of the video. I want to rank every Dropout show, which is, interestingly, not every show on Dropout, as there's a bunch of stuff from College Humor. The original point of the video was to do both Dropout and College Humor shows. However, a certain snag hit after I watched all the College Humor shows and realized, dear God, there's like 50 of these and most of them are not interesting at all to talk about. Trust me, I'm doing both of us a favor by not talking about them. I'm also not going to be talking about Dimension 20 series at all, which is Dropout's Dungeons & Dragons branch, mainly because I think about talking about Dimension 20 in its own video would be way better. I'm also not doing any of the Dropout Presents stuff, since it's one-off recordings of stand-up and improv that are labeled on the site as movies. Shout out to Hank Green's Pissing Out Cancer stand-up though, which leaves us with a total of 27 different shows. And a question, which one of them is the worst? So 11 years ago, there was a few College Humor sketches called Mama Plum that parodied Honey Boo Boo, who is notable for being someone I truly only know about through their brief mentions in the popular MMO's YouTube channel. These sketches were, to put it lightly, total dog shit. And after that, about 6 years ago, Dropout made C Plum Run, which takes the main two characters of the original and puts them into a show with an overarching story. So again, I didn't know Honey Boo Boo or her mother Mama June, so when I started watching the show, I only saw Josh Rubin dressed up as a despicable fat lady named Mama, which wasn't exactly a great first impression. Made all the worse how the shows keep doing this bit where Mama gets naked, and truly the whole punchline each time is that there's a naked, ugly fat lady on screen. Elaine Carroll's character, Plum, isn't that much better either. She fits right into that boring comedy character archetype of the overly stupid character, made even worse by the fact that it seems like the entire point of her character is to make fun of a little girl. Alana Thompson, who is Honey Boo Boo, was born in 2005, which means during the airing of both the original sketches and C Plum Run, she was a literal child. But beyond all that, is the show any good? I mean, no, it's here for a reason. It's not unbearable like the original sketches are. It's about the Plums moving into a new state after it's found out that Mama had sex with a 16-year-old, which we're not going to talk about because we still have 26 other shows to talk about, and I fully believe someone could do a whole lecture on why having the main character of your comedy show do that is a very bad idea. So, Mama enrolls Plum into a fancy school in their new neighborhood so they can do the bit where Plum does something stupid and a normal kid can go, that's stupid, a few times per episode. For reasons I don't entirely remember, and I'm not entirely confident are there, Mama decides to have Plum run for student president, and since the principal hates the two, instead of simply expelling Plum, which he has every right to do by this point in the show, he makes a deal about how if Plum can't become student council president, then she has to leave the school. And so Mama employs the help of Grant O'Brien to play the straight man, as the Plums repeatedly try and fail to get Princess Plum more votes. To sum it up, it's nonsense. It's a nonsense plot with stupid characters based on Honey Boo Boo for some reason. The show is like well produced too. There's clearly people behind the scenes who've displayed real talent in the making of this. It's just unfortunately none of these people were the writers. I think it all boils down to the fact that the show's main form of comedy is berating the two leads, Mama especially. She's fat, she's egotistical, a sex pest, and so incredibly stupid that the show leads away from feeling at all funny, and it just feels mean-spirited. But since it's only mean-spirited to the same two characters, for the same reasons, it's also deeply boring. By the way, I should clarify, this isn't like a critique of the people themselves who wrote or acted in the show. These characters were created over a decade ago, and everyone I personally recognize within the show has done way funnier stuff. And I promise the rest of Dropout isn't like this. It really feels like some weird fluke, some last dying remnant of early college humor, back when it sucked. Because really there's only one other Dropout show I actively dislike. Truth be told, I kind of feel bad putting Erotic Clubhouse so low, as it features Rekha Shankar and Jess Ross, who are two of the funniest reoccurring Dropout members, and their banter together is super enjoyable. However, the show is the two writing silly erotic fanfiction, and occasionally that fanfiction is about real people, like NSYNC, and that's partnered with the occasional drawings, which occasionally feature real-life guy Lance Bass with his whole dong out. I know it's part of fanfiction culture to write about spicy stuff featuring celebrities, and the fact that it's a gag does kind of help, but the using of real people in this way makes me feel personally uncomfortable. So even though I feel like I'd be much more positive about the show if it just stuck to fictional characters, I can't find it within myself to rank it any higher. Does this count as a show? Dropout site says so, even if it is just a collection of songs. Either way, one of the songs is the See Plum Run theme, which does actually suck. Though I would like to shout out to the best song of the bunch, Stardust, which is a song with a vibe not dissimilar to David Bowie's Starman, but with Bill Nye quotes for a reason I don't entirely understand. The rest of the songs are fine for the most part, nothing to write home about. Y'all ever watch Drawfee? It's a drawing show where four artists, Nathan, Julia, Jacob, and Karina, get prompts and then talk as they draw. It can be really relaxing. It's kind of a go-to for me whenever I'm sick. Cartoon Hell is just that, but with animated segments. The show has a sort of plot where Nathan and Jacob have to draw prompts for silly TV shows in order to get out of hell. And it is just Nathan and Jacob. I don't know why Julia and Karina aren't in this. Like, come on guys, it's 2025. Women can go to hell too. I think that's my main issue with the show. When Drawfee already exists, it just kind of feels pointless. Like, it's still got that chill vibe I like from Drawfee when the two are just drawing, though it feels a little hollow without half the cast, and it's got this intro segment where the two have a little animated bit about the two being in hell, and then at the end, the drawings could turn into a little animation, and like, I feel bad about saying this about animation, but since it distracts from the Drawfee stuff, it just feels unnecessary. Which is probably why Drawfee is still going on and Cartoon Hell very much isn't. Still, the intro theme song does go hard, so it does have that going for it. Troopers is an old college humor series that, in my opinion, has some of their best sketches. Troopers Animated takes the characters and setting, which are just some slacker knockoff stormtroopers who work for Lord Dredd in what is essentially the Death Star, and it's animated, if you somehow hadn't guessed that part. I like these. They're short, they're charming, they've got an occasional laugh. It was a nice little treat for me while I was doing this whole binge. The only reason it's so low is because it really is just Troopers again, but animated, and there's only 6 short episodes. If this show was any lower, I'd probably do some dumb pun like, I guess nobody asked for this show, but I digress. Nobody Asked is Dropout's take on Mythbusters, and as someone who literally had a Mythbusters themed birthday party when I was like 9 or something, I was immediately drawn to this show. Each episode gets 3 different segments, where one of the show's 5 hosts, Brian David Gilbert, Iffy Nwadiwe, Reka Shunker, Oscar Montoya, and Elle Woods, would have to do a comedic science experiment. Which, by the way, absolutely great batch of hosts. However, all these people are, for the most part, comedians, and so the actual science being done on the show ends up being a bit too simple. Let me give you an example. Episode 1, Iffy Nwadiwe does an experiment that is just putting a balloon around the end of a trumpet and then having a guy play the trumpet to see if the balloon will get filled with air. In other words, the entire science experiment consists of seeing if blowing air into a balloon will make it have air in it. Take a wild guess on if that one worked out or not. That being said, Iffy also did my favorite of these science experiments, in which he turned a Twinkie into beer. That was fun, and it had a bit of insight into the alcohol making process, which I personally find really interesting, and there's something just inherently comedic about Twinkies. So if they ever do a season 2, my thoughts would be to keep the hosts, because they're all very funny people, and if this were any other group of people doing these science experiments, I would probably actively dislike the show, but then add a scientist to the crew that they can converse with to figure out actually interesting science topics that they can then try and turn into a comedic spin. Also explosions. That was half the fun of Mythbusters, is when they exploded and shot stuff. Give Brian David Gilbert a gun and have him explode something. You can thank me later for the expert advice, Sam.
Hi, yeah, Robin from the editing booth. I forgot to say the name of the show. The name of the show is Gods of Food.
I do have such a love for specifically fake documentaries. Don't know fully why that is, but this show definitely scratches that itch. Each episode is a little expose about different chefs. There's the cheese asshole, the Buddhist monk, the emotionally deprived scientist, and the others. I think the show is very funny, with well-defined characters, with each of the cooks feeling close to being someone who could be real. I do think the episodes are a little bit too long, the Pak Jong-mi episode especially, being a whopping 21 minutes where most of the jokes revolve around white people basically harassing her because they think it's good for Instagram to take photos of pictures cooked for them by a monk. The area they filmed in for that episode is super beautiful though, I'll give them that. Paranoia is werewolf, but the werewolves are incredibly high. For those who don't know, werewolf is what inspired the visual novel Raging Loop, so that should clear everything about the rules of the game up. The added trait of the werewolves being high and then having to do tasks while high does make the game better in my opinion, but I do hate that it shares right away who the werewolves are with the audience. I think if it just edited around the werewolves, things would be a lot more fun. Season 2 almost does this. For the first round, it doesn't say a thing, but at the first werewolf murder outing, it does reveal who they are, and in a way you can't simply skip. Still, it is a fun time. Where in the World is Sarah Cincinnati is a travel show with a focus on questions about geography and culture with mini-games. I mean, that's kinda it. The show also has this character, Sarah Cincinnati, who is this total fuck-up who is completely lost in who knows where, and only through the power of trivia will she be found. It's a fine bit for how small her segments are. Not personally making me laugh, but it is very much in that territory of that just sort of being a me thing. Still, I like trivia shows. I love watching Jeopardy! And the questions here are way easier than they are on Jeopardy! Which means I can actually get a few, so that's nice. Still, it is just a trivia show, and not a particularly Dropout feeling trivia show, and one with a few episodes, so it'd be weird putting it any higher, but I do find this show very charming. The fact that people can do this show is so impressive. Played by Ear is musical theater improv, which is the gayest idea for a show I think ever, and it has good points for that. Basically, the host of the show, Mano Gapian, gives the players prompts that they turn into songs, and each episode has its own story, which means that each episode is basically its own musical, which is a really cool thing for people who like musical theater. Personally, I'm not the biggest musical theater fan, and because this is all improv, a lot of the songs end up going on for a lot longer than they should, which is even an issue for what I think is my favorite song of the whole series, Unicycle. And as someone who has gotten headaches from specifically listening to musical theater music too long, which I found out in a brutal fashion after watching Hamilton once, while I understand there is absolutely an audience for this show, and I would not be surprised if anyone told me that this was their all-time favorite Dropout show, it's just not really for me. Rank Room is a very chill show, and I enjoy that very much. It just revolves around Katie Maravich and 3 random Dropout people giving answers to weird hypotheticals, and then at the end, the different answers to the hypotheticals are ranked. It's funny in a very casual sort of way that I do enjoy very much. Still, it's this low because there's nothing about it that actively impresses me like the rest of the shows do. It's just sort of pleasant to watch, and that's about it. Gastronauts is a slightly dropoutified version of a cooking competition show, where there's 3 new judges every episode, which are, of course, all from the general Dropout rotation, and there's a big focus on creativity within the different meals. Other than that, it really is just watching people cook, and if that's not your thing, the show isn't for you. However, I'd say it's my thing, and the show has a space aesthetic, including the main prize of the show being literal bits of the moon, and I think that's very charming. My main critique is that at the end of every episode, one of the judges gets a prize for having the best cooking prompt, and it just sort of feels like it takes away from the actual accomplishments of the chefs, but that's a minor critique, and maybe it might just be a me thing. Monet's Slumber Party is one of the harder shows to define. Each episode revolves around Monet Exchange, her super intelligent computer with super big lips named Mama, a monster who is literally in the closet named Mitch, a delivery man named Kevin whose looks I can only describe as porny, and 4 guests that differ each episode. Each episode has its own unique segment that are all slumber party themed, tarot readings, fuck, marry, kills, would you rather, all that kind of stuff. Usually stuff that leads to good banter, which helps as this show is mainly about creating a good vibe. I mean, just look at the main set, it is so delightful. It's fun, goofy, lighthearted, and the show as a whole feels like a queer safe space in a way that I really respect. I really hope this one gets more episodes, as of right now, it's only 6, including a test episode, and really that is the main thing holding it back. Low-key, this one could have gone either right before or after Monet's Slumber Party. If I could have shows tie, this would be the perfect moment for it. Either way, Thousandaires is a show where 4 people each get to spend $1,000 on whatever they want. Such things include capes, a bull riding machine, fancy cheese. The possibilities are limitless, with the exception of the financial limit. I think all of the shows I personally want to be on, it's probably this. This show has this sort of boundless positivity to it, where it's these friends hanging out and doing things that cost $1,000. It's so entirely joyful, I can't help but dig it. But, once again, only 6 episodes. I almost wish I could put this show lower due to how genuinely squeamish it makes me. What the Fuck 101 is essentially an adult spin on Magic School Bus with a teacher named Professor Foxtrot who looks over 4 kids in detention. Foxtrot then uses her magic wand to show the kids the weird and fucked up parts about history and science. The Parasites episode specifically, I found myself actually covering my eyes with my hands like I was a small child at least 3 different times. Unfortunately, it's got some of the best animation on Dropout, and the science and history is genuinely very interesting, even if very, very fucked. There's also a secondary show tied in with What the Fuck 101, which is What the Facts 101, which takes a deeper dive into the science talked about in the episode. Also, a behind-the-scenes episode, and if there's anything you're going to learn about me by the end of this video, is that I do love a good behind-the-scenes video. Overall, this show was the best animation content on Dropout. Not only does it have fun, if simple characters, but the extra focus on taking a fun spin on science is absolutely my kind of thing, even if the show does make me want to vomit. Profusely. I put Parlor Room in the exact middle because it's the newest show on Dropout, and so it has limitless potential. Will it suck ass? Will it be awesome? Who knows? My feelings on it are already pretty positive. After all, Becca Scott, the host of the show, has done a fantastic job in what few episodes are out. For clarification, as of writing this, there are 3. Also, episode 2 features Angela Giarratana, Lou Wilson, Vic Michaelis, Kimia Bepornia, and Jacob Wysocki, which are not only some of the funniest on Dropout, but also Angela, who is one of the funniest on Smosh, which is the second reason why I'm so down for this show, because I love watching the Smosh Games YouTube channel, and this is very much that sort of vibe, but with Dropout. I really hope this one gets a shit ton of episodes. Breaking News Network is such a perfect blend of scripted and unscripted comedy. Each episode features the Dropout rotation as news anchors, and they have to read off a teleprompter whilst trying not to laugh, and occasionally breaking out into bits of their own. It is such a fun show, with so many memorable moments, though that might be because I do think this is the first ever Dropout show that I personally have seen, and there's a lot of moments that linger in my mind. Namely the true facts about Grant Anthony O'Brien trilogy for reasons I shan't say due to me wanting YouTube to actually put this video on people's home pages. Ultra Megatron Team Go is another scripted show, and as you can pretty much tell immediately, it's a bit of a spoof on Power Rangers. Though the parody only adds to the charm of the show rather than fall into the usual pitfalls of parodies. The set designs, the costumes, especially the costumes for the different monsters, they all ooze with love and charm, with an overarching story that shows a clear love for the original Power Rangers shows, and it is very funny, with each of the main cast constantly getting absolutely banger lines. The main story and individual episode stories can often border on feeling like just a genuine take on a Power Rangers show, and there's something about that I feel is deeply charming. Kingpin Katie is all about Katie Marovich turning her life around, as she starts to sell drugs instead of buying and using them for herself. And well, I always appreciate a good moral in a show. Where Ultra Megatron Team Go is Power Rangers, this is Dropout's take on Breaking Bad. But there's enough differences between Katie and Walter White where at times it really does become its own thing, more loosely inspired rather than outright parody. The show's quality is entirely dependent on Katie's character, and luckily her character directly leads to a good balance of comedy and a bit of drama that is really fun in its own right. The show also has some really memorable side characters. There's this fun Meter Maid character, the main villain of the show, and also Mike Trapp. I only watched a little bit of Power Rangers Samurai as a kid, and I still have yet to finish Breaking Bad, but not only have I watched a shit ton of Star Wars, I also really loved the original College Humor Troops sketches. Troopers Rise of the Budget takes the formula of half parody, half actually good normal show from Kingpin Katie and Ultra Megatron and turns it up to 11, with absolutely astounding sets, great and memorable characters, and a plot that would be just as fun without the humor, and yet it's still got some great bits. And once again, I'm just a sucker for all that Star Wars stuff. They've even got their own Club Shido. I'd go into more detail about the story, but if you already have Dropout or will get Dropout soon, this is absolutely worth the binge. And so are the previous 2 shows I talked about. I kind of roped them all together as they're pretty similar in humor and style, and while I do think they're really great, when looking at this parody trilogy, they feel very disconnected from Dropout at large, with the exception of Gods of Food, which is a lot more anthological, and technically See a Plum Run, which sorta does what they do, but so much worse. That's why, even though the parody trilogy is of an extremely high quality, I don't put them as high as maybe they should be, because I think the best Dropout show should be representative of Dropout. and these next 7 shows I think all define Dropout as a whole. Without these 7, Dropout just wouldn't feel right, if that makes any sense. I think it'll become more clear what I mean once I actually start talking about them, so let's do that. Smarty Pants is a presentation show where every episode has 3 segments, each containing someone giving a presentation on anything from which cartoon characters are invited to the cookout. It's the newest of the top 7 Dropout shows. As of writing this, it's only partly through season 2, but there's already a few absolute banger presentations, and I can feel it in my bones that more are on the way. Plus, I really like the vibe of the show. The calm yet pseudo-intellectual vibe of the set, and the commentary from the host of the show, Renka Shankar, is always funny. Very Important People is an improv show where each episode a new person gets turned into a newer person, and then they have to go get interviewed by Vic Michaelis as their new character. First off, the makeup for this is nothing short of absolutely astounding. And after each episode, there's a last looks that goes into the design and makeup of each interviewee, and you know I love that good behind the scenes stuff. There's some real fun characters in here too. Zeke Aaron McKinley, Hayes Steele, Pig Number 2, Candace, Tommy Shrigley, and there's probably my favorite, which is Ogbert, and that's just to name a few. Though I also really love Vic Michaelis as the host of the show. They usually seem deeply invested in who they're interviewing, while still standing out as a funny character in their own right. The way she acts in the show could truly bounce well off of any character, and even if the character they're interviewing isn't one of the greats, you know she'll always be funny. Make Some Noise is a spin-off of the show Game Changer, where every episode contestants get improv prompts and then have to do that. Very much like a Whose Line Is It Anyway, except more variety in both prompts and cast, and personally, I think it's a bit better. Improv as a whole, at least for me, is very hit or miss, but the prompts are so good that contestants constantly do them justice, so there's a lot more hits than misses. The show has a very fun vibe to it. The points don't matter at all, which is something I really like actually. The intro slaps. It is an absolutely perfect show to unwind to. Actually is a trivia game show entirely centered around nerd trivia, with a really fun question format in which a series of statements are given, and the contestants have to figure out which statement is incorrect. It is pedantic as hell, it leads to a lot of silly moments, and it makes my vast knowledge of random nerd shit feel actually kind of useful for once. Mike Trapp is the creator of the show and was the original host, and I think he did a fantastic job, but the past 2 seasons have been hosted by Ife Nwadiwe, and he's just been knocking it out of the park with a lot of really fun themes for the different episodes. Not only does it basically perfect the quiz show, it has a focus on things I personally find very enjoyable, and it leaves more than enough room for some quality banter each episode, which really helps it feel like a Dropout quiz show. There's a good reason why this is the Dropout show with the most seasons. Only on a platform like Dropout could a show like Dirty Laundry work so well. Every episode has 4 people who know each other well give their secrets to Lily Do, who then reveals the secret to the 4 without saying whose secret it is. And the contestants have to either guess whose secret it is, or, if it's their secret, try and subtly convince everyone that it isn't their secret. It is social deduction at its finest. The show never reveals beforehand who is the wielder of secrets. Take notes, paranoia. And the secrets can be both really interesting stories and also very, very funny, with the whole show leading to just absolute quality banter. Also, Grant O'Brien is there, and that can make any show just a little bit better. And now it is time to talk about the second best show on Dropout, which is a show I only watched for this video, but once I finished watching it, I knew that not only was it going to make it to the top of the list, but that it was going to be one of the best shows I've seen all year. Total Forgiveness is about Allie Beardsley and Grant O'Brien giving each other challenges of drastically increasing intensity in order to get money to pay off their large amounts of student loan debt, which, as someone currently in their 3rd year of college, does make the show into a bit of a horror. After all, by the end of just the first episode, you see Allie Beardsley in a nearly catatonic state and Grant O'Brien just covered in blood just to pay off some of their debts. Still, the show manages to have incredibly funny moments with incredibly engaging challenges. Grant gets a shock collar, Allie has to sing the national anthem at a baseball game, and there's so many moments and challenges that just linger in the mind. And it's also a show that not only could it only be done on Dropout, but it only could have been made in this way by Grant and Allie, with a vibe so specific and so real to this show that it feels like this incredibly rare example of an actual one-of-a-kind TV show. Especially that last episode. If you know, you know. And I won't spoil it, but something gets pushed over by the end of the last episode, and just thinking about it makes me genuinely emotional to the point where I can feel myself about to tear up just writing this bit of the script. If there's one thing I got out of this video, was that I got to watch this show and witness its hilarity, its horror, but most of all that I got to witness its boundless heart. Anything more I can say about the show, and trust me, there's a lot more I can say about the show, as it's totally going to get its own 2-hour video essay one of these days. So I'll just go and say, watch this show. It's all love. And after saying all that, it feels a little insane that anything could top Total Forgiveness. However, early on, in order to stop myself from going insane from constantly second-guessing all my rankings, I constantly considered what shows defined Dropout. I think the last 6 shows all define the current age of Dropout brilliantly, but when I personally think Dropout, I think Game Changer. Game Changer is a show where the game changes every show. The many games displayed on the show are absolutely wonderful, and they highlight one of the main reasons why Dropout works. It's the way production is so willing and ready to work with the talent themselves to create unique, fun, and funny experiences. So many of these games would not work if not for the talent on them, and so much of the talent wouldn't be properly put into these perfect little environments for them if not for a production crew that understood who they were working with and why that talent can be so entertaining. I think that's highlighted by the host of the show being Sam Reich, who is not only a talented host who knows how to work with the cast while on camera, but the CEO of Dropout who knows how to work with the production off of it. I think a perfect example of all of this is the episode Second Place, because already a game show where you have to try and get second place is already a good enough idea for a show. But to put the hyper-competitive Brennan Lee Mulligan, the not-at-all competitive Oscar Montoya, and the wild card Allie Beardsley into a game show about trying to get second place is absolute gold. There's so many episodes that I have rewatched repeatedly. The Noise Boys episodes, the Escape Room episode, the one with Tony Hawk in it for some reason, the Sam Says trilogy, Ratfish, the one where Izzy Rowland breaks a chair. 1 year later is an episode that came out only 2 months ago, and as of writing this, I've already watched it twice, despite the fact it is an hour-long episode. And I will be watching it again. Hell, the newest episode with literally my favorite stand-up comic, Josh Johnson, is definitely going on the main rotation. The show has so many exciting moments, so many quotable moments, so many good games. It is unbelievable how many banger episodes it has. Just looking through the list of episodes brings such a collage of good memories immediately to the forefront of my brain, as it has been the ultimate comfort show for me specifically. Also, the last 3 seasons have a behind-the-scenes episode for each main episode, and you know I love a good behind-the-scenes video. My name is Robin, this is Spellbound Media. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.